Hello, this is John Davis, and I'm going to be doing a demonstration of Fast Koala. Fast Koala is a Visual Studio extension. You can access it from the Tools menu in Visual Studio. Go into Tools and Extensions and Updates, click into Online on the left, and then on the top right, search for Fast Koala. And there it appears at the top of the list, and I already have it installed, so you should, I see I get a green check mark. If you don't have it installed, there's an install button. So once it's installed, I'm going to demonstrate the key feature for what this thing can do. If I go into C# and I go into web, I want to do a new project, new web application, and I'll go with .NET Framework 4.6. I can do 4.6 and below, ASP.NET 4.6 and below. Hit OK. I'm going to go with an empty project, just an empty project is fine. And this is just the factory template. Fast Koala hasn't been applied yet here, but you can see obviously because I chose empty, there's nothing in it. It's just the project with a web.config in there. Now this web.config comes with it a couple transform files. There's a web.debug.config and web.release.config. And those those file names correlate to the configuration names. If you go into the configuration manager, you can add a new like QA or some other configuration name, and so and then to get those transforms, just right-click on web.config and choose add config transform. So what that does is, what these transform files do is when you go to publish, they'll have instructions on what to update in the web.config. So if I go into web.config and I'm just going to say app settings and just leave that empty there, and then say I want to do an insert of a key value pair in my transform file. So we'll say add key equals my key, value equals my value, and then XDT transform. XDT is the syntax that Microsoft provides for doing these transformations. I'll say insert. Now at this point nothing's going to happen because if I build, we don't have inline transformations. You have to go to web application, choose publish, and then publish to an Azure website or IIS or something like that. So what we're going to do here is with Fast Koala, just choose enable built-in transformations, hit OK, and I'm going to give it a folder name. I'll go with the default of app_config, hit OK. Now that web.config has been moved into that subdirectory, the transform files have followed with it, and then also it's been renamed to web.base.config. So that is the same file that was in the root. I'm going to hit build, and then I should be able to see now in the web.config, now generated in the root directory, there is my app settings entry and the inserted key value pair. So here you can see the transform has been applied against the web.config, and so this becomes not only a preview, but it is the real deal. I can actually debug this now with my debug transform having been applied, which makes it great if you have multiple configurations that are beyond just like debug and release. Say you have different types of server environments, maybe different geolocations or different just different types of deployment environments that you want to debug against, or different configurations you want to debug against. That can be handled, and also this is also useful for like TFS or any other continuous integration server where you have a build server and you want to publish in different configurations. You can get all of the binaries outputted with their configurations pre-built without using MS Deploy. So it's all baked in, and it's basically it's a rich part of the build process, and it's treated as a build process component. So now I can't modify this file. This generated file. This editor is locked down, and so it's not going to let me edit it. and that should help alleviate some of the concerns that this warning that was injected raises. Basically saying do not modify the web.config file directly, always edit configurations in the app.config folder. Now if we had chosen a different folder name, then that would be reflected here, but basically it's saying don't modify the generated file, modify the base config or the transform file. So that should cover, that tooling of locking down this editor should cover probably 60-70% of the scenarios that you might have where somebody might accidentally open up this file, being the wrong file, to edit and try to make changes. Now, for the other 30-40% of your scenarios, there's a little bit of tooling on that as well where it monitors those changes. So I'll pull up Notepad++, and now it's not going to merge those changes in, but you'll see what happens here. I'll say hello world here, hello world. So this is a real change. Save it, and I get this warning from Visual Studio saying the web.config file has been modified, but this is a generated file. You'll need to immediately identify the changes that were made and propagate them over to the base config. So I hit OK, and it goes one level further and shows me a diff view. And so this diff view shows me basically what my web config currently has versus what the base config file has. So this includes both the change that was made in Notepad++ plus the transform that was done. So this is why I want to eyeball this and identify, okay, this one I don't want to put in the base config, but I do want to bring this over just as new. So I'll just copy this over and we'll paste that in, and so now they're basically matching up. And so I'll close that, and I can see my base config now has the hello world there. So now with that there, I can see that if I rebuild the solution with the generated file being regenerated, I have both my transform and any changes that had been propagated. So the tooling isn't perfect. Obviously, it's not going to automatically bring over the changes, but it will let you catch those scenarios where changes get made. Perhaps you're using a NuGet package, installing a NuGet package that needs to modify the web config. It should bring those, capture those, because, or as long as the NuGet package doesn't modify the web config at build time, and it's done just using the console or something, it should be able to capture those and give you that warning and help you to migrate those changes. So this web application scenario of enabling build time transformations is kind of the inverse of what other extensions do, like Slow Cheetah. So the name Fast Koala being something of kind of an inverse name of Slow Cheetah isn't coincidence. It's because of this inverse feature set. It was to fill this gap where a lot of people are building web applications. They want that build time support with F5 support to be able to switch between different configurations here. I'm going to choose release, and you'll see that app setting insert go away because the release config doesn't have that insert. So so I can now debug against a proper configuration, dynamically updated configuration here. Again, it's the inverse of Slow Cheetah, therefore Fast Koala. Now that's not all that Fast Koala does. That's the initial motivator for Fast Koala. It's the core feature. So if I go though into new project and let's say I do a Windows application, so let's say Windows Forms or even a console app or even like a class library, all of these things support App.config files. So if I do a console application here and I see this app.config file, notice that there is no, by default, there is no transform file in here. I can't expand this and see a debug and release, and that's because that feature, at least in the factory Visual Studio, that feature is only available in Web Deploy. It's only for web applications for Web Deploy. So that's why the need for Slow Cheetah. That's why Fast Koala also bakes this feature in just for consistency. So if I right-click on App.config and enable build time transformations, I hit OK. Now this is not inline. There's no inline transformations here, so therefore there is no need for a subdirectory for managing your config files. And what I mean by that is there's no, so the app config file gets copied over into the bin directory. So this is called a bin targeted, what I call a bin targeted build time transformation. So if I say app settings here, and then I go into my debug config, and I do the same insert, add key equals my key, value equals my value, and xdt transform equals insert. Now if I rebuild this, again, this is not inline transformation, so I don't see anything in the project here, but if I look at my bin directory, there's a, so the factory behavior is that the app.config file is copied over into the bin directory as assembly name .config. So the assembly name being console application 1.exe. So we see we see console application 1.exe.config here. So if I look at that, I can see that not only did the app.config file get copied over as per the factory behavior, but also the transform got applied. So I see my inserted value, the key value pair, in my debug transform file. So that is also added to FastKoala. That's available in FastKoala. That's a scenario number 2, and that's basically the core feature of, or at least the original core feature of Slow Cheetah, and a few other extensions that are out there as well. Now let's look at another scenario. If I right click on this project and I choose publish, and Visual Studio out of the box, the factory behavior of Visual Studio supports publishing an application, which is basically packaging it with a setup file, a setup executable. So that brings me to click once. So once you've run publish on a Windows app or console app, you're now in the territory of click once. Your application is now a click once application. So if I look at the output file, in here is the install files. These files can be put onto a web server if you configured it as such with a web bootstrapper. And these .deploy files are basically the same files that you'll see in the config in the bin directory, but with the .deploy added, just for supporting downloads from IIS without dealing with security constraints. But no, you'll notice that the transform didn't happen here, and I don't really know why. But I believe that click once publishing seems to be grabbing the app.config out of the root, and I don't know why. I think it's just because it's a design flaw. They didn't anticipate people would be enabling transforms, which is not really a part of Visual Studio on outside of the web. So there was no need to deal with that. To them, it's not a design flaw. But now that we have transforms, it becomes a problem. So how do we deal with it? Well, it turns out, well, if it's grabbing the app.config out of the project root, then that's basically the same behavior as publishing a web application with the Web.config. So the solution then, the strategy then, is the same as the web. So you will enable inline build transformations, build time transformations, by right-clicking on app.config and choosing again enable build time transformations. This option becomes available again because I chose publish. Had I not chosen publish, it would be not visible. But because I chose publish, FastKoala is seeing that, well, yes, you have transforms enabled, but this is a click once app, so it's not going to work. Not for your published output. So I'm going to enable inline transformations. You'll see this prompt is a bit longer again. Talking about inline, it's going to prompt for a folder name, so I'm going to go with app.config again. Now, I could choose any other directory here. I could choose dot, and it would be the same directory. Things would be put in there. I could do dot backslash, and it would go into a parent directory. Dot backslash, and you could do a tree as well, like dot backslash CFG or whatever. Or here you could do CFG backslash and then another directory. In that scenario of dot, that only becomes useful if, for example, you've got a multiple project in your solution, you want to share a common config. I don't know if that's useful. Probably not. I'm just saying it seems to be doable. You have a lot of options here. If you just do dot, then that basically declares the current directory as your config folder. I don't recommend that. I get concerned about collisions and that sort of thing, but there aren't any initially because of renames. Anyway, so I'm going to choose OK. We see the app.config file now moved to the app.config folder. It's been renamed to app.config. This is all the same as we saw with the Web.config. And the generated output now has that transform applied. So you see add key equals my key, value is my value. That's now there. And of course, because that file is there, obviously if I publish this again, I'm going to see the transformation applied to the generated published output right here. So my key value pair has been applied, my transform has been applied to that output. So Fast Koala, as you can see, there's 3 different scenarios that it works with. There's web applications, there's standard Windows and console and class library projects, and then there's click once applications. So click once being those same standard web or those standard Windows or console apps, but having been published. So in those 3 scenarios, there's a solution for build time transformations, and they're all supported. For click once and for web, the solution being inline transformations. That gives you a predictable output that you can always see. You can always look at here, and you can work with what's there. So, and once again, this file is with the app.config, just like with the web.config. I can't modify this. If I go in File Explorer and try to modify the file, and again do hello world, I'll get that alert, and we'll get that merge action happening. So this is a merge view. I can merge this over. So again, it'll be monitoring changes so that you can merge those changes into the base config and get that stuff copied over like you would expect. So there's the base config. Here's the generated output after rebuilding. So there you go. So that is the config part of Fast Koala. Now, Fast Koala also supports build scripts, so we'll take a look at that now. So if let's say I right-click on the project and choose Add, or alternatively, I right-click on a folder, or I create a new folder and do that in there. So let's say Build Scripts here, and choose Add. Now there's a new submenu called Build Script, and there we can see 3 features. Now this might be a growing list. So far we've got 2 build script files and then a project extension feature that we'll take a look at. So I'll start with PowerShell script. So PowerShell script, this is not just adding a PS1 file. This is actually modifying the project to with an inline task. Basically, there's some C# embedded into the project now that will iterate over all of the MS-Build project properties and expose them to your PowerShell script. So I'll take a look at this, and we can see that there's a MS-Build project directory property that I want to expose in this sample, and so I would expect to see a directory path in my log output window. So sure enough, there it is, MS-Build project directory equals, and then a nice beautiful file path. So that is basically iterating over all, that is basically all of the MS-Build properties exposed in MS-Build. So if I look at the folder and look at the CS proj, I can see it might be VB proj if you're using VB.net. I can see all of these different properties that I could query against. And so basically any of these XML elements inside of a property group are properties. They're all named according to the property that you want to do. And in fact, I could add my own. So I could say hello Fast Koala, and then the value could be howdy. Now this might not be visible up front because Visual Studio does a caching of the MS-Build stuff. So it's kind of hit and miss, and so in which case we have to restart Visual Studio. That's not a failure of fast Koala, that's just a sort of a behavior of Visual Studio. So, but we'll try this. So we'll say hello fast Koala and rebuild, and of course it's empty strings. That means I have to restart Visual Studio, and I'm fine with that. So we'll go ahead and restart Visual Studio. And I'll open my most recent console application 1 and build, and I should see howdy in the output. There it is. So as you can see, the MS Build properties are being fully exposed to the scripting runtime, and likewise we can try this with Node. So if I right click on Build Scripts, add Build Script, Node.js script, there again, if I click on that, you see this flicker, the project gets unloaded, reloaded. What that's doing is adding an inline task with some code in there to iterate over MS Build properties and expose them to the scripting runtime, which in this case is Node.js. So I'm going to choose invoke before or invoke after, hit OK. Now I can move these files around. In this case, these are just files that can float around, and the way that it knows how to run them is based on the build action. So there's two new build actions, invoke before, invoke after. These are the same names as what you saw with the radio button. So whatever radio button you chose gets selected as the build action. So in this Node.js example, I can see it's going to do iterate over the property, or it's going to grab the property project GUID and expose that in my output log. So there it is, the msbuild.properties, and then the project GUID property with the value being exposed with as the GUID. Now, if I wanted to iterate over get that list of all of those properties, it's easy to do that with Node. I can just say console.log json.stringify, and then in there I'll do msbuild.properties. Properties as the thing to stringify, and then I'll also pass in second and third parameters for some prettification. So null and then comment 2. That'll give it a little bit of an indentation. So now we can see all of the properties that the scripting engine can see. And these are all available at your disposal. All of these are available both to Node as well as to PowerShell, but this is a reference you can use. So that's there. And that is fast Koala's build script support being available to you. And then finally, let's right click on build scripts and choose add. Let's see, I need a little more space here so you can see. Add build script and then project extension, which is going to create a targets file. Now this one's a little bit different. This is not a file that just floats around. This is actually an actual addition to your project itself. It's actually married to your project. So that's why we get this extra prompt here. You must not move, rename, or remove this file once it's been added to the project. If you do, you need to look for the import tag in the project XML and just update it accordingly. So just be careful with this one, but it is very powerful. This is actually what you're doing here is you're literally modifying the project directly, but it's just an extension. It's kind of like an insert, or it's like an include file. Think of it as an include. So I'm going to copy this attribute over after targets equals build. That'll make sure that this particular target loads and runs and doesn't replace any other target. It's just its own little build script. And the task on here is message, which is basically the same as console.log. The output, the parameter is this text. So we'll expect to see this project GUID equals project GUID, similar to what we saw earlier with the Node.js stuff like this. So we'll try this now. This will only work with this after targets attribute being copied over in there, otherwise you won't see anything happen. But there it is, the .targets output project GUID equals, there's the GUID. Now there's a lot of things you can do with this sort of targets file. You're basically working in MS Build at this point, which means that of course you're going to have all of the properties exposed to you. This is not only just like copied over into the scripting engine. There's no scripting engine. This is the project itself. So basically everything is already available to you natively. You're working in native MS Build land here. So so this actually becomes very handy because you got a lot of tasks that you can work with that have all been set up to be easy to include in your project as MS Build actions. If I do a search for MS Build tasks, for me it's the second link, but you get a nice reference here of all of the tasks that you can execute. You know, there's you can manipulate the files, copy, delete. You can do format version, all this stuff. There's lots of things you can do here. So you can pull up this task reference yourself and take a look at all your options. That's built into MS Build already. You don't have to do anything beyond what we've seen here to get access to this. And of course, now I also want to emphasize nothing that we've gone over here, that we've seen here, requires Fast Koala after it's been set up. I could uninstall Fast Koala now, and you would still get everything that you have seen here still working. All of this stuff gets baked into your project. But this stuff is built into MS Build, so so Fast Koala didn't have to do anything to expose these tasks other than reference do this import of this targets file. Now, additionally, however, you could also do something like MS Build community tasks, which even takes your tasks list even further. These are all community-generated, community-built tasks that some people have put together. Really helpful tasks that you can use. Now, it's not very well documented. There's a list here, but in terms of actually knowing the parameters to pass in, you'll have to do your own research. But there's a lot of tasks available here. And just to demonstrate easily working with this task list, I'm just going to go into my package manager console, install this NuGet package per their instructions, and you'll see things happening here. Looks like it added a virtual solution folder. I don't know where that lives unless I go into try to look for it. It's not in my project folder. If I go up to the solution folder, there it is. It's the .build directory, so I can see it there. And so there's a couple files there, and then so if I open up this targets file, now just so you know, if you use this process I'm showing, what I have to do to get this working is I've got to modify this and get rid of all this stuff. So I just referenced the DLL directly, which is a sibling of this targets file. I don't need all this other stuff because I'm not installing it globally. So there that is. And so that's ready to be imported. So if I go back to my custom .targets file, I say import project equals, let's for now I'm just going to say .build / and then this file name. And then I need to figure out where that build folder is relative to my targets file. So we're almost done with that import. Now this won't work. I'll get a build error because there's no .build directory in my project or in my build scripts folder. So what I need to do is, first of all, make it relative to my project root and then go up a directory. So I'll do that. I'm going to say MS build project directory and then go up a directory, so .. and then do the .build. So now, if I rebuild, that error should go away. Nothing's happening yet, but at least I can import that external resource. So now, if I do a say, look at my options here. There's a lot of different tasks I can try. I'll just go with beep. That's the simplest one I can see. That validates that we've got that thing loaded. So we'll just do beep. And so if I build now, I should hear beep. There it is. You heard that. May not have been as loud for for me as it was for you, probably for you. But yeah, that was nice and loud, probably. So that's just a demonstrating, so you can load in the community tasks and you can go have at it. Again, all of these are available to you and you can work with those. From here, you're in MS Build land, you can just do whatever you want. So this file doesn't float, like I said, it needs to stay where it is. If you move it, you're going to need to update your imports, your import statement inside the project. I am considering adding another option here for another type of file. Maybe leave this, maybe make this a .proj file and then use .targets as a file extension for, rather than making married to the project, but instead do something similar to the invoke before, invoke after, and use that build action. And if it's a .targets file, then it would actually run MS Build and then invoke the file name as the target name. In which case, again, I'm just thinking out loud. I haven't actually done this yet. I'm just trying to come up with some ideas on how to improve on MS Build tweaking. But this is the way things are at right now as of version 1.1.22. So if you guys have any feedback, let me know. That is fast Koala now. I would be greatly appreciative of anything that you guys send me, whether it's a bug report or an idea. My email address is john@widgets.com, or you can also reach me at john@johndavis.net. Either way, I'll get your email, and I'm really looking forward to your feedback. Thanks for watching, and have fun with MS Build and Fast Koala.